First of all, thank y'all so much for hopping in. I was challenged by a friend of mine to start doing a few more of these, and I've talked on cross-selling, rounding out, and a lot of the principles that I'll go over in this webinar in the past in different areas and avenues. And so he's like, "Hey, you should put together a webinar specifically on this." So decided to do it, and as of last week, I think there was like 9 people signed up, and then on the last email that I sent out had another 45 people sign up. Really thankful for everybody coming to hang out, and especially those of you who were able to hop on live. A little background about myself, if you don't know me personally or don't follow me on socials. My name is David Watson. I'm the founder of Risk Advisor, but prior to that, I started a scratch independent insurance agency here in South Carolina in 2016, merged that into Mappus Insurance in coastal South Carolina in 2018. And then we collectively sold that to Afore Insurance Services in 2021. So that corny line that you get seen thrown around a lot, built by agents for agents. That's my background. I specifically, even before building it for the sales team that I led inside of Mappus, I just wanted to make my life easier. And so I built the precursor of Risk Advisor for myself personally, and then gave it to the rest of my team. And we all saw a lot of advantages coming out of that. And around 2021 is when I started building Risk Advisor for other agencies as well. On today's call, we're going to go over 6 areas, but really a systematic approach that's going to allow you to take general ideas and apply them to your agency. So on the screen, you can see where we're going to hit those, but just to hit those audibly for a second, your website, the conversation that you're having with your prospects, automation, your team, umbrella, and then kind of a bonus one that I threw in there last minute is your specialization if you have one. A lot of my context, a lot of what I'm talking about on this webinar comes from personal lines insurance. That's my background. That's what I've spent my career in. But all of these can be applied to commercial lines, life and benefits, health insurance across the board. So even though if personal lines is not your focus, there is going to be takeaways here that you can apply across your agency. So to kind of start off, there's going to be some stats thrown up here. There's some ideas thrown up here. You're going to probably roll your eyes. You're probably going to, why am I even hanging out on this today? Just because it's simple things. But sometimes the most simple things are things that need to be repeated. And so when it comes to keeping track and keeping up with and focusing on the number of lines of business per household, the number one metric to keep in mind there is that after 5 years, you're going to see over a 20% increase in your retention inside of your agency on a 2 or 3 policy household versus a monoline household. Again, these are things that we know. And yes, I do see down here that we got some formatting over here that I'll fix when I send this out to you after the fact. But what we're really talking about here is something that makes personal lines profitable. And we all know that really when it comes down to personal lines or really insurance in general, it's not the first year, it's what you do long term with that client that makes that a profitable account. With according to a couple deep research prompts with ChatGPT and a couple of those other ones, the average independent agency writes 1.4 policies per household. I put up a poll if you're able to find it, if you're coming to hang out a few minutes after I mentioned that. Would love to hear one, if your agency is tracking this, if you have a way to look into this, but then two, where you stand, where your agency stands on the number of policies per household. We'll talk through a couple different things that are going to help you get to 3 plus, really 3 plus, maybe 4 or 5 policies per household, and how that's not just a retention factor. Obviously, that's going to play into revenue upfront, but then long term as well. Again, some things that we already know. We've been preached at about this, but the best growth opportunity in your agency, especially as we are starting to move a little bit out of a hard market into a softer market, is already in your system, in your agency management system, your CRM, in your agency. We know this. It costs 5 to 7 more times more to acquire a new client than to keep an existing one. But so many of the processes, so many of the shiny objects that we buy in our agency, and I'm guilty of this personally in my agency, inside a risk advisor, so many of those things that we focus on inside of our agency are built around new business, whether it's buying lead, buying systems, buying processes, et cetera, et cetera. It's so focused around that capturing those new clients that the expanding what's already in our agency doesn't seem as sexy. And a lot of that is because you might lead with the most profitable or the most expensive, which means the most commission lines of business with home and auto. And you don't focus on some of these other lines because they're smaller policies. Carriers are going to notice your book. It's easier, especially as you're starting to hit a lot of areas of the country are heading into a softer market. Carriers are starting to open back up a little bit. This is especially true during a hard market. It's going to still be true in a softer market. But carriers are going to ask about your book of business. Multi-line carriers are going to care about what we're talking about today. So not only is it going to set you up for success in your current book of business with your salespeople, with your service staff, et cetera, et cetera, it's going to set you up for success with going out after those new appointments. Along with that, one of my favorite carriers, auto owners, they did a fantastic job of incentivizing us, and then therefore allowing us to incentive our team on the cross sell philosophy around the fact that most of these carriers are going to give you better commission, both new business and renewal, when you sell more policies that are on their paper. One big number to throw out for you to think as we're going through all this is 400,000. One additional policy per household, 500 households, 800 average premium. Now, that is built to be oh, wow, yeah, $400,000 of premium. That's a big number. That's exciting. Let's do it. We also realize that it might actually be two additional policies. Maybe it's a $400 umbrella and a $400 golf cart. But the same thought process, getting past just the home and auto insurance and getting into these additional lines of business, are going to be things that make a financial impact immediately. And then each year, the beautiful thing about our business is each year that you go by with additional revenue, it just makes that client, that household, that much more valuable. So it does make a difference in our agencies to focus on the new business part of rounding it out. But then, as we'll talk about, making sure that it's part of our process along the way to continue expanding these accounts. Cross selling in personal lines is not a sales tactic. It is a profitability strategy. When you talk about it with your team, when you pass this along to your team, do not say we're going to have a new sales campaign. We're not going to go through and you got to make 100 dials to round out 75 accounts. Because if you treat a round out or a cross sell or any type of those opportunities as the number one reason you're doing that is to grow the book of business, to make more commission, very naturally, without us even realizing it, that's going to bleed through in the conversations that you have or we have with those clients. So it's a tactic. It's something we need to figure out a way to measure it. We need to figure out a way to track it. We need to figure out a way to reward it. Everybody inside of an independent agency, if they've been there for more than 2 days, they know they should cross sell. It says they are just not set up to. That might not be the case. You might already be doing a great job. In most times, this is a couple general statements, but in most cases, it's not an effort thing. One of the things that I've had conversations with carrier partners, but also agents across the board, is the more times you get told no in your personal life, in your professional life, whatever it is, the more times you get told no, it's naturally going to detract you from wanting to keep doing it, from wanting to keep asking. And so a lot of what we're focused on here is to make it easier to naturally ask, where it's not even feeling like you're asking a question that's going to have a yes no. The with this, the cross sell opportunities are going to happen at specific moments. We all know about the new business process. It says new business buying, but really that's all the way back to the first interaction. We all know about renewals. We all know about asking about life changes with policy changes or claims or things like that. The most important thing is going to be that you acknowledge that prompt. And when we're talking about prompt right now, we're not even talking the big thing inside of the industry, inside of the world right now is prompting AI. I'm not even talking about that, but that's a good way to think about it. Is when you go to prompt AI, ask it to do something, it's going to set off cues. It's going to go look for context. The AI is. So what we need to do is we need to train our team to listen for the prompt, but more importantly, to use that prompt to find context. One of the things that I've spoken about a lot over the years is, and again, I'm not trying to make this about risk advisor, but one of the things that we naturally started seeing in our agency when we introduced risk advisor into our sales process and therefore into the renewal process is we always enjoyed or we always tried to hire people based off of their personality. If we could help it, our goal was not to go hire someone with insurance experience. We can train them on that. We can provide them that. We can provide them the process. We can do all those things. We had proven that time after time. The problem with hiring off a personality is the first thing that goes when it comes to your personality and what takes so long for someone who doesn't have insurance experience, but they have a good personality to build up that confidence to get to a place where they're going to be able to be your best salesperson and be able to start churning out great production is you hire someone without experience, but they have a great personality, and then you put them on the phone and you start asking questions. You have a script or things like that that are very basic, leave a lot of room for, oh, I'm leaving a lot of room for that personality to come out. The problem is if you don't lead the technical part of the conversation, therefore a script, you're going to kill that person's personality in that conversation because they're having to overthink about X, Y, and Z questions to ask. And so what we started seeing inside of Mappus when we put in the process of conversational forms for our intake is it allowed us to hire team members and they immediately came in and they were confident that they knew, hey, as I'm going through this conversation, I'm collecting what I need to collect. So therefore it's allowing my personality or allowing their personality to come through and shine through. With round out opportunities, how many times have you said, or you know that your team is saying, okay, we're going to keep track of that. It's a new home purchase. They're coming to us for a closing. They got to close in 15, 20 days. I will follow up and I will get the auto insurance. I will get X, Y, and Z. Or maybe, hey, it's a new purchase, but because they're moving to the state, you know what? I was able to go ahead and get the home and auto insurance, but I'll round out the umbrella, the personal jewelry, or et cetera, et cetera. If you do that, you've taken the first step. But the problem is, have you set up the follow up? Have you set up the ability to track that to where you're going to be able to come back and not only document, hey, here's the flag, but that flag sets up something down the road for me to actually go back and gather those additional lines of business. With this, the chain is going to work when you put together the trigger, the systematic trigger that's going to set up and be based off of your process. And again, would love to talk to you one day about Risk Advisor, or if you're already a Risk Advisor user, you understand this. But if you're not, This doesn't have to it doesn't have to be a situation where risk advisor is the only way to do this. If you've got a process that works in your agency and you apply these principles to it, you're going to see success. But with this, when you have a process that is going to be repeatable, it's the same process every single time, and it's the same process for every intake, then it allows you to start one after that. You got the process, you go through the script, you go through the follow up. It sets up your renewal team, your service team, with the notes, with the follow up items that they need to possibly do that down the road. But if you don't have that in place, then you're going to maybe make it easy where, oh yeah, we have a great process. We make it so easy on the prospect, and I'm not telling you to make it difficult, but if you don't have a way to one prompt them for additional lines of business naturally, prompt them as the producer to ask for those additional lines of business if they didn't indicate anything, and then on top of that, be able to notate that in your other systems, then as good, as clean as that process that you have in place is, what you are naturally doing without even realizing it is devaluing your agency. If your process is so focused on making the new business process so seamless that you don't have a conversation around additional lines of business and cross sell at the beginning and set yourself and your agency up to cross sell throughout the relationship, then you have devalued your agency because it's not, we all know this. Our agency gets paid when we go to sell. Our agency's value comes from the renewal checks. That's why we love this industry. But if you are not setting your agency up to help with a higher retention, to help with data that's going to make it easy to round out additional counts that say no upfront, then you are setting yourself up for that failure. All right. So let's talk first about your website. There's a couple things that I see every single day as I'm trying to reach out to new agencies or learn about agencies before a demo. I land on a lot of websites. So the first thing is, hey, we're an insurance agency, or hey, we're an independent insurance agency based in XYZ town is not your position. I see this all the time. Like, hey, we're an insurance agency. We can help you with your auto, your home, your life, your business, your cyber, et cetera, et cetera. What you need to do is position yourself as something that we'll talk a little bit later on about. Hey, if you've got a specialty, position yourself. But go ahead and start prompting with your words and what the message that you are telling to your prospects around how you're going to be able to help. Prospects are they're going to self-select things that matter, that things that are relevant to their how they speak. So if you on your website, auto, home, umbrella, bundle of joy, maybe if they have a new kid, okay, great, bundle of joy. How do you insure my baby? Or bundle of clothes or things like that. If your website says bundle more than once and you haven't done anything to proactively define that in terms that your prospect who does not have an insurance license, who does not speak insurance maybe once every couple of years, if you're speaking in ways that make perfect sense to your agency, but don't make sense to them, again, your website, your first position is already setting you back. Instead of a product list, hey, protection for your family, your home, and everything you have built. Making it to where this conversation, like they're they're going to want to protect the things that matter most to them. Another really big issue that I see way too many times is on, you're like, hey, I want to make it super simple for somebody to request a quote from me. Name, email, phone, what type of insurance they're looking for. This example here specifically says personal and commercial insurance. Yes, you've made it easy for that person to give you the contact information. I'm not one to say that contact information is not extremely valuable, but what you're doing here is even I've seen this example with, hey, it's not personal or commercial insurance. It's, hey, home insurance, single option select. auto insurance, single option select, so on and so on. One change, and this is again a way that Risk Advisor can help with our client facing quote forms. But one change that any form that has this is to change the way that clients or prospects select what they're interested in, change it from a single select dropdown to a multi select checkbox. We all expect our team to round out. We all expect that conversation to happen. We all have expectations in our life. But anytime that we can set ourselves up, we can set up our team for success, which is very simple. Hey, maybe someone landed on your website because the awesome blog you wrote about home insurance, or maybe it's a referral from a realtor because they're buying a new home. They might land on your website for home insurance, but as they're scrolling, you know what? Yeah, let me go ahead and get a quote on auto, umbrella. As you keep scrolling, maybe life insurance, things like that. There's no reason the friction that you think you're avoiding by making it simple with a single select, or I know in most cases on these forms, it's just never something that you've ever even thought about, but there's no reason for you to not make it easy for that prospect to cross sell themselves by telling you additional lines of coverage that they're interested in. If you take one thing from this webinar, that's the number one thing that I would encourage you to email your current website developer or whoever manages that inside your agency and change. If you've got a single select dropdown, change it from single select dropdown to multi select, and around 8 to 10 items that are the lines of business that you're wanting to offer to your prospect the most, make sure those options are available there. One of the big things, especially in today's world of a digital approach, which again, we have client facing quote forms, we can help whether it's digitally on the website or over the phone or wherever that needs to be. Ease of use is absolutely very important. And I think with ease of use, one of the things that we have naturally gone to on why we say ease of use, ease of request, or ease of making it to where they can request a quote from you. I think the reason why we focus so much on that is one, on the agency side, it has the normal conversation over the past 15 years has felt more like a pitch of, especially when, hey, if you're comped or if you're a sales manager and you've already been thinking about this in the past about, hey, I need to get additional lines of coverage up, and someone asks for home insurance and you're like, let's go ahead and take a look at your auto insurance. No. Let's go ahead and take a look at your umbrella insurance. No. Let's go ahead and take if your process that you taught your team around that is all about just asking about additional lines of business without the proper context, that proper script, there's a reason that's going to turn into the reason on why it's been difficult for your agency to cross sell and round out is because, and that's also the reason around why digital has become so commonplace is because people are trying to avoid that. Instead of doing that, instead of it, if you are going to be an agency that values a conversation, and there that can be a digital conversation, don't get me wrong. But if you are really truly wanting to set yourself apart, focusing on how you prompt your team, how you set up these questions that you want them to ask, and really spending some extra time on making sure that they're being asked in an appropriate way that doesn't put up a fence is extremely important. And it's going to make a the framing on that's going to make a huge difference in your agency. It's also important as part of that conversation. I know an ongoing joke, specifically around cold calling, is either going to know they buy, sell, or die. Going that deep, but a no today is a data point. It's not going to be a dead end. It's a data point, but it's only not going to turn into a dead end. A no doesn't turn into a dead end only if you have a way to track the no. If you don't track the no, it's a dead end, or it's a no that turns into someone one member on your team asking today, and because you've got a cross sell campaign, you got to Maybe, I know February and Share Your Love or like all these different things that we've been conditioned over the years of having campaigns around cross selling. If you don't have a way to track it, then it's going to turn into a dead end very quickly because as soon as someone tells you no twice within a short period of time, that's going to be a frustration. That's going to be something that gets you in trouble. So again, whether it's a CRM like agencies, you can do this in your AMS, making it very easy for your team to know where these conversations, when they've happened and what the response there, extremely important. But even more so important is that no is going to position how you ask about it next. With this automation, again, whether it's like a lifecycle automation inside of Agency Zoom or automation inside of Insured Mind or another CRM, one, you need to make sure like, hey, if you're not tracking in your CRM, like when I first started on Agency Zoom, what we did is we only tracked on the quoted stage. We only put in there things that most of the time it actually ended up happening is the quotes got put in there when it was sold. If you're not putting in that quoted stage or whatever your CRM or AMS does on that, if you're not putting in the lines of coverage that you offered, and then either it's called smart cycling inside of Agency Zoom, there's other terms, other things around that. If you're not one putting the data in there, the opportunities in there, another quick plug, that's something that Risk Advisor automates for you. But if you're not putting those items in there, then with that, this automation here, whether at new business, at 30 days, midterm, renewal, those things become infinitely harder. One of the things that I talk about a lot is that your new business intake, and I'm stealing this terminology from Casey Nelson over at Catalyst. I sat in one of his talks here recently, and he referred to Risk Advisor in systems like Risk Advisor as the front door to your agency. If your front door is not defined and your front door is not documented and your front door is not set up in a way that's going to make sure that it sets up the structure of your AMS, the structure of your CRM, the structure of your CRM from then on out, do not spend $10,000 on automation, 5,000, 2,500. Because if the data that's coming into your agency is sloppy, if the data in your agency is not structured or set up for success, these automations are going to make you look like a fool. You're going to send out an email to someone that you're asking for their umbrella policy and you just sold them umbrella last week. Or you're going to be sending out an email about life insurance and you just had a conversation with a prospect that can't buy life insurance because of a medical condition. You think that retention rate's going to drop at renewal or immediately because of an awkward conversation? Probably right and probably true. So setting your agency up for success by going the extra step, making sure that your team goes the extra step of setting up your systems on the front end at new business is vitally important, not just for round outs, but also it's going to make your life easier on renewals. And I know I heard past decade, I heard about it from my service team. I hear about it from a lot of your agencies. The service team, the renewal teams, they are saying, hey, we're not set up in a way from the producer. There's always a fight going on between the account managers and the producers. They're always pointing fingers. And if you have a process, which I think you could and should, for your account managers to try to round out and reward them with commission on top of their base salaries for that, if you're not making it easy by holding your producer, your new business team accountable for the way that agency or data comes into the agency, there's no way that they're going to be able to really focus on that with the intent and the effectiveness that you want them to have. Sorry, now fell asleep there. Consistency is going to be volume. You want to make sure, again, we talked about this on the last slide, making sure that whether it's a label or check boxes or even manual automation where you're tracking what was offered, what wasn't offered, why it wasn't offered, things like that. If you're sending out emails, provide value. Don't just say, hey, do you want umbrella insurance? Provide Travelers every single year puts out the top 10 personal umbrella claims from the last year. Take those, work with ChatGPT, Claude, write 10 to 15 blog posts from those, do a video, turn that blog post into a short form video. And if you're trying to cross sell umbrella or life insurance, et cetera, things like that, provide valuable value. Don't even ask for the line of on the first email. Don't even ask for the, hey, do you want to quote? Provide enough value, explanation on why they need this or why they should consider this, that they're just going to come to you and ask for the quote. Text, things like that. Make sure that at new business that they're opting in to receive text communication from you. Just because someone is your customer does not give you the right to text them if you do not have express written consent. I know there's a whole this different stuff about the TPCAs and things like that, that what went through, what didn't go through. Save yourself, your agency a lot of money by just, hey, can we text you? Yes. Okay. Can you sign off on that? Another quick risk advisor plug. That's something that we help with as part of new business as well. Great opportunity and space for your renewal team to have a call with the with the customer. Having that call where they're able to quickly pull up the existing risk profile intake or however you want to structure or call your new business intake and say, like, hey, this is what we have on file for you. Has any of this information changed? This should be doable in under 2 minutes on that conversation. Another, I didn't put this in originally, but another very important thing about that on the new business side, make sure you're collecting contact information for if it's a married couple or multiple people in the household. Make sure you're collecting the contact information and consent to reach out for the both of those or multiple of those contacts. There has been plenty of times throughout the history of my agency or talked to with others about this where the person handling new business might be one of the partners in the household. And then a year or two in, it's like, hey, now it's your turn. You handle that. Well, if you're not able to reach out, whether it's one of these automated touches, these life event conversations, or just these renewal calls, if you, hey, I'm only doing new business with the husband, I'm going to make it easy and not ask for the spouse's information until the application. So then I only get the name of the spouse or the name and date of birth. You don't have contact information, you could lose out on future business or renewals simply because that person, they've never talked to you, never heard from your agency. So when it's their turn to handle the insurance, they're going to ask their friends for referrals on who they hear from. So side event didn't mean to get into that, but just make sure, again, it goes back to the data that you're bringing in through that front door of your agency. It comes to the data that you're collecting. If it's not if it's not in the comp plan, it's gonna be a hobby, and really what that comes down to is I hinted at earlier around carriers where they increase the commission if you round out, like, let's say if you put home, auto, and umbrella, it bumps up the commission. Don't keep that as the agency owner. Flat rate commission structures where no matter what, you're gonna get an X%, they don't encourage the behavior you expect. There's also something to be said where a lot of the carriers that pay higher commission, if they've been around for a while, we all know about the carriers that come out of nowhere. It's like, I'm going to buy your business by offering 5 points higher. Again, have the processes and encourage and teach your teams on why you recommend certain carriers over the other. But a lot of times, carriers have successfully coached and talked through with you, the agency principal, on putting more business with them by giving you better commission, and then therefore you're keeping that split for yourself. If you're not rewarding the behavior and then also discouraging the behavior, I know there's plenty of agencies out there that, hey, if you write a single line of business, maybe if you're heavy on home insurance, obviously you're not going to say, hey, if you write a monoline home, we're not going to pay you. But if you write a monoline 6 month auto insurance policy, or you write a monoline for us at Mappus and monoline flood, you're not getting paid. Encourage the output that you're wanting and also tie compensation to that as well. And I know I'm running a little bit long. I'll work on getting through this and finish up. Just as important, if not more important, especially on the renewal and service team, recognition builds culture faster than training. Not saying don't train, absolutely train, but also make your training part of your process where it's just naturally done as you go through the process. But recognize your team. Taking that a step further, one of the things that I used to do whenever I hired a new team member is I had a intake for my new hires. I'd ask things like, "Hey, what's your if I was buying you coffee on the way in the office, where would you want it from?" So that way you know who to reward them there. If a couple other questions that we all ask. Most important question I ask new hires is, how do you like to be recognized? Because you might have someone that their way they want to be recognized in private. One, it's more valuable to them, or two, they're just going to get embarrassed if you call them out at a team meeting, even if it's for something good. So don't just recognize your team in the way that they want to be recognized. So that way it has a lasting approach or benefit. If you're not already, run a report, have a VA, have a team member, have an intern this summer. Even if that intern's your kid or something like that. Agency management systems don't make it extremely easy, but figure out a way to do it. If you're going to plug this into Claude or ChatGPT, please make sure all data, personal identifiable information, on top of that, emails, contact information, et cetera, is extracted. But for your agency, come up with the average policies per household. Come up with each team member the average policies per household. You're going to naturally find that at least one team member is more than 25 to 35% higher than the average. You're probably, if your team's big enough, you're going to find at least one team member that is 25 to 35% lower than the average. Hopefully for you, the principal, that's not you. But what you need to do is then track those team members, especially the ones that are doing great things, listen to their phone calls, see what they're doing differently than the rest of the team, compensate them on a project saying, hey, by July 1st, if you write this, what you do up as part of our process, and we'll come up with improvement criteria, et cetera, here's $1,000 bonus. How many of you would pay $1,000 today, 5 seconds ago, if I could take if you were able to have a set process that's going to take your average lines of business per household from 1.4 to even 1.7? When you think about how big of a difference that makes in your agency. Again, compensate the things that matter to you and your agency. Accountability, making sure that you give them the tools, that you give them scripts. I'm not saying, hey, at the meeting in front of everybody, I need you to be ready to go through this script. No, I'm saying focus on giving them the scripts. All of our phone calls are recorded now or have those tools. That's when don't focus on having them do the practice call with you. If it's a new hire, obviously they're going to have their list of people that they're reaching out to, checking on there, give coaching based off of that. Checklists, intake tools. Again, I'll give another plug here with Risk Advisor. We built out specific conditional logic that we call conversational logic. It's going to make it feel so natural that by the time you get to the end of the conversation, not only are you going to have everything you need to have, but that prospect is not even really going to realize that you have gone through an in-depth review of their insurance, that you've gotten everything you need. And that way, when you tell that person, hey, I'm your trusted advisor, you don't have to call them back or text them back in 2 minutes saying, hey, I know I'm your trusted advisor, but I forgot to ask about X, Y, and Z. Making it easy for that is so, so important in your agency. Umbrella, this is the biggest thing. And again, if you need to drop off, I know I'm getting to time. I apologize. I don't normally go long on these. This is being recorded. So if you need to drop off, I would love for you to stay, but I will definitely get the recording out to you shortly. The biggest difference in my personal book of business came when I started having an umbrella conversation with every prospect without talking to them about umbrella insurance. And so with umbrella insurance, I know a lot of people are like, there's a lot of people who don't need it. And that could be true. But a lot of times the people that don't need it, it might only be 150, 180, maybe 225 bucks per year. And if you're writing these with a home auto and umbrella carrier, probably going to get a discount for having it to where it's only an extra 50 to 100 bucks. These, a lot of times with umbrellas, are not going to be something that makes your agency directly a lot more money. But every single line of business that you add to a household makes it that much more positive friction for them to switch. Where, hey, someone, they might shop their insurance. How many times have you save someone money. And that was the sole focus of the conversation is like, hey, I'm saving you $250 a year. Yeah, I know you're saving me $250 a year. I know, can you just do my home insurance? Cause that's where you're saving 400, but you're an extra 150 on the auto. No, if we do that, we lose the discount. We all have had that conversation at some point. Every single line of business that you add to that equation, one requires them to save addition like, one, requires them to go more in depth, talking about the person trying to replace you, but then two, expands that consideration. So, there's a lot of things. Umbrella is the one I led with. I'm gonna talk through that really quickly on how I did that, but this is the same. There were so many times when I switched somebody, I did a good like, I went was able to get a home and auto and add maybe flood, umbrella, motorcycle, et cetera, for somebody who had home auto and personal articles at State Farm. State Farm is fantastic at personal articles, and they're so stupid cheap that most of the time those just stayed. And a lot of times I did the bad thing of saying, yeah, you know what? Hey, just keep it over there. Well, again, that's a traction. That's a data point where maybe that State Farm agent's able to go back after that. That's why it's so important on those additional lines of business to add them. Not only if the data point of you being able to know what other policies are elsewhere, but also so that way you can continue to go after those. So for me, if someone came in, they just wanted home insurance. We did a lot, or say home and flood insurance. We did a lot of business for mortgage brokers and realtors. We were like the number one agency in Mount Pleasant, Charleston, South Carolina. I think at our height, we had over 150 mortgage and realtor professionals referring us business consistently. And so when they come in, let's say they told us, "Hey, I want home and flood insurance." Great. Okay. Were you interested in your auto insurance? And this is not on this slide, but this is what I would do in this process. No, we can talk about that in 2 months when we move here or actually move down. Great. I just made a note of that. We're good to go on that. Anytime, this is specifically in the risk advisor system, anytime someone wanted home insurance, I'm clicking umbrella insurance. Get to the end of the home conversation. Last question, if auto is not present, is, hey, I know we just talked about it, but did you want you sure you don't want to answer 5 more questions on the auto? All good. Okay, no worries. As part of your home insurance coverage, there's this coverage called liability insurance. We're going to review this along with the other coverages. Want to make sure that one, you've got enough coverage here. It's one of the cheapest coverages out there when you look at price per dollar. Obviously, I'm ad libbing a little bit extra here. But then two, it doesn't happen that often, but let's just make sure you don't have too much coverage. We all know that's not going to be the case. We all know that they're not going to have too much coverage in that situation on a base homeowner policy. To do this, and no pause here, no waiting for them to respond. To do this effectively, we need to ask 2 questions. What's your annual income and what's your estimated net worth? The acceptance rate on how many people just automatically just went straight into that for me was like 98%. Especially part of that's related to the fact that these are new home buyers. They're having this conversation already. But think about the fact of, okay, I've got that information. If you're big on life insurance, I've got information right now as part of my proposal that not even covered in this webinar of offering additional items on the proposals. I've got enough to put a 20-year term together, things like that. The next piece of this is inside a risk advisor, we have an estimated liability risk calculator. Now, each state's a little bit different, each individual is a little bit different, but this is specifically related to potential wage garnishment, which is related to how long someone has until retirement. So by getting these 2 factors here, we're able to get an estimated liability risk of about 2.1 million. Well, with that, we now know between a $2 million umbrella, maybe a 250, 500 auto liability or 500 CSL, where we need to be. I also know that very early in my career, unless they currently had umbrella insurance and unless they specifically asked for it, most of the time if I'm offering an umbrella, I just offer $1 million coverage because that's just what people do. It's better than nothing. In this situation, based on this individual, hey, $1 million is not going to cut it. I personally, based off of this alone, I personally have sold a $25 million personal liability umbrella. It was three layers. It took me a month and a half to get all 3 layers, but it was one of the coolest things that was able to have that conversation with that project or that prospect. And then when I went to go quote and present it, if it's a young, like 30 something husband and wife, I'm going to assume two vehicles, two drivers, clean records, and go ahead and present the umbrella. Most of the time, they're like, oh, an extra 250, $300 for the umbrella. Yeah, let's go ahead and add that. All right, let me get your deck pages. Again, I'm not asking at this point, I'm not asking for to quote their auto. I just need your deck pages so that way I can schedule the umbrella correctly. Oh, yeah, here you go. Most of the time at this point, they're actually, you know what, go ahead, run my auto as it is. If not, I'm gonna go ahead and run the auto and continue to have that conversation. The last thing I'll hit here is your specialty. Our specialty was flood insurance. And so what we had is we had a lot of content around flood insurance to continue to back that up, but we also had a lot of people who came for us just for flood insurance. And with our specialty, we had special markets. We had proper understanding and education on how to properly rate someone, how to explain, hey, the coverage you're paying for doesn't actually cover half the house because of the basement, et cetera, et cetera. So what we also had from time to time is we also had people who said, "Hey, I love your flood insurance quote. Can I go with your flood insurance? I'm gonna go with this home insurance policy over there." Unfortunately, to do the flood insurance, we have to do the home insurance. We made our specialty an easy segue to right then and there get over the average lines of business for the average independent agency. And what this allowed us to do is be very specific on why. This was not a sales tactic. It's a business model that we build our agency off of, but it's going to allow us to do a better job as their agent. And the real story that it's not a story, it's the truth. But the thing that we were able to point to on a consistent basis is it is a better claims experience when the home carrier and the flood carrier are with the same agent. You don't have different agents telling them different things and trying to get it on that person's his loss ratio for the bonus or whatever. You had one agency, one advocate. There were actually a couple times where we were able to put it with the same carrier, made it even better. But that is if you have something that you specialize in, something that you have better education, better markets. One, we talked about it very early on. Make that known on your website, make that known on your content, your blogs, et cetera, et cetera. But then also make it a condition to do better for your client, but also do better for your agency. Your special, I'm gonna skip this. We're good there. Um, Really, as we finish up, the intake layer is really that front door that makes this systematic. We at Risk Advisor, what we do is we help make sure that the conversation in your agency happens the same way, whether it starts on the website, starts over the phone, it's going to happen the same way for every single team member. The only way that you're able to truly scale past good producers that hide a lot of inefficiencies, and the only way that you're truly able to scale when it comes to your retention, your remarketing, et cetera, is by controlling the process in a way that actually works on the front end for how the data comes into your agency. There'll be another QR code in a moment. But if you want to check out Risk Advisor, I would love to hop on a demo with you and show you more. If one of the things you're thinking about is my team does not have time to keep up with this, one of the easiest ways, I know it's gonna sound like hoodoo or whatever or voodoo. One of the easiest ways to make more time in your agency is to stop quoting every single carrier. My marketing rep says I have to see activity. Well, if you could tell them why you're not quoting them, that's the same thing. Um, One of the major ways that honestly, Risk Advisor, we have not done a great enough job of telling our story around is Risk Advisor has a feature called underwriting AI. So basically, this screen that you see here is after you've done the intake in your agency. So you've taken in that home, auto, and umbrella, additional lines of coverage intake. You use that data immediately to give you a green, yellow, red light of which carriers are eligible. And if you click on like underwriting concerns for these carriers are ineligible, not only are you going to see which ones are ineligible, but you're also going to see why they're ineligible. So that way you can trust but verify. But then also, once you're done with this, on average, agencies are able to quote 35 to 40% less of their carriers every single time, which even if it goes through a rater, is saving your agency time and allowing you to focus on these other items. Uh, Obviously, I blew past the time that I had internally expected. But uh, and that's it for the rest of this. But if you have any questions or want to ask anything, definitely open it up at this point for Q&A. Let's see here. And thank you all so much for hanging out with me. It was awesome. We averaged around 30 people throughout the call, so I really appreciate y'all wanting to hear what I said.